The hum of the servers was the only applause Patricia ever got. 3 hours past midnight. Her fingers still moved with surgical precision over the keyboard, her eyes bloodshot but locked in. Somewhere between line 4822 and the final compile, she whispered, "Come on, baby, fly," like she was coaxing life into a wounded animal. Then it happened. The build succeeded. No errors, no warnings. Project Nightingale had taken its first breath. She should have felt relief, joy, some kind of cosmic hallelujah. Instead, she just sat there in the sterile flicker of the terminal window, soaked in silence, clutching a lukewarm Red Bull like it was communion wine. This wasn't just a software launch. This was 7 years of gut-punch persistence, 2 divorces worth of late nights, and enough ignored JIRA tickets to fill a damn encyclopedia. Built Nightingale from scratch. Its architecture, its logic, every cursed API duct-taped together with brilliance and desperation. Her name wasn't just in the codebase. It was the codebase. And I mean, if you're reading this and you're into these kinds of digital David vs. Goliath stories, I'd really appreciate a sub. I'm clawing my way toward my first 10K subscribers, and trust me, it helps me tell more of these true, filtered stories the algorithm would rather bury. Back to Patricia. Her desk was a kingdom of coffee rings and post-its that only made sense to her. But at the center of it all was Nightingale, her arc, her legacy, the thing that was finally going to get her out of the fluorescent purgatory of mid-level dev hell. Not that she was naive. She knew this company, knew how the game was played. Promotions weren't about brilliance. They were about boardroom charisma and keyword vomit. Still, this was different. Nightingale wasn't just good, it was essential. Designed to dynamically restructure live systems without downtime, it had already shaved millions off operational costs during trial runs. CTOs from other branches were buzzing about it. She even overheard one VP calling it the future of infrastructure intelligence. Patricia had nearly cried when she heard that. Alone, of course, always alone. And then there was Mark with his Patagonia vests and corporate TED talk charm. Mark who thought JSON was a Scandinavian DJ. Mark who'd once asked Patricia if backend meant the thing that powers the PowerPoint. He'd been her supervisor for 3 years, which in practice meant he sent check-in emails once a week and collected credit like it was air miles. His gift wasn't leadership. It was proximity to other people's labor. Lately, though, something had shifted. Mark had started asking questions. Not real questions, God forbid, but those vague, MBA-scented inquiries like, how's the deliverable ecosystem shaping up? And can we synergize the throughput narrative for the exec deck? Patricia had smiled, nodded, and kept her head down like she always did. Let him play boss. Let him dribble his buzzwords on the margins. The code was hers. The vision was hers. The warhorse called Nightingale only answered to one rider. Quietly, just for herself, Patricia had embedded something no one else knew about. A hidden interface, buried deep under 10 layers of permission obfuscation and firewall trickery. She'd called it Featherfall, a private failsafe, supposedly for disaster recovery. But in truth, it was a god key, a skeleton switch, a quiet reminder that even if someone else tried to wear her crown, she still held the fuse. She never imagined she'd use it. Not really. The air around her felt heavier lately, like the calm before a corporate storm. Mark was lurking more, showing up at meetings he used to skip, asking for architecture maps, wanting executive-friendly breakdowns, PowerPoint decks just in case. Patricia wasn't stupid. She could smell ambition like cordite, and whatever Mark was planning, it wasn't going to leave space for her name on the plaque. Still, she held out hope. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the one time the work spoke louder than the suits. She took a screenshot of the final build, printed it out, and tacked it to the inside of her drawer like a battle flag. Beneath it, she scrawled one word in Sharpie: mine. 2 days after the build, Patricia walked into the war room to find her whiteboard had been refreshed. Her intricate mind map, the loops, exception paths, hybrid scaling flow, all wiped clean. In its place, color-coded slide deck printed out and thumbtacked like a middle school science fair. Big blocky words. Nightingale, leading the future of self-healing systems, with Mark's favorite font, Calibri, bolded to hell, and his initials stamped in the footer like he'd shat it out of a Fortune 500 womb. Figured I'd help translate some of your genius into something digestible, he said, standing behind her with that tight, teeth-baring smile he probably practiced in the mirror before performance reviews. You know, for the stakeholders. The big dogs don't speak in acronyms and command line. Patricia didn't answer, just stared at the board like it had coughed blood. She told herself it wasn't a big deal, just corporate nonsense. Translation work, support work. Still, something turned in her gut. The next few days were a blur of faux collaboration. Mark popping into her office without knocking, asking for quick summaries and high-level overviews of components he'd never touched. He forwarded her own diagrams back to her, with pastel gradients added and stupid stock icons of glowing gears. He printed a page from TechCrunch and highlighted a paragraph that vaguely resembled Nightingale's design and wrote, "Let's align with this trend in the deck." Patricia nodded, gritted her teeth, focused on debugging a memory leak that only showed up under specific load tests involving third-party APIs she duct-taped into working via sheer caffeine and prayer. Let him play dress-up, she thought. The real work still lived in the code, and only she could speak its language. But the whispers started. People from other departments dropping by saying things like, "Mark tells us Nightingale's going to revolutionize the ops flow. Sounds like his baby's almost cooked." One even said he mentioned his dev team's been working nights. "Guess that's you, huh?" That one hit different. Patricia felt something curdle behind her ribs. It wasn't just miscommunication. It was erasure in slow motion. She walked into the kitchen on Thursday to grab the last half-dead donut and found Alan, old school, crusty, and 2 years from retirement, pouring coffee like it was lifeblood. He glanced up at her, gave her that look, the one that said, "I've seen this movie before." "You better keep a paper trail," he muttered. Mark didn't get promoted by writing code. He got promoted by burying whoever did. Patricia chuckled, forced. "You saying I should be paranoid?" Alan didn't smile. "I'm saying you should start using your own printer." By Friday, Mark had booked a meeting room for something called Vision Alignment Session and included her as a technical advisor. Entered the room and immediately regretted it. 10 people. A printed agenda. At the front, Mark with a laser pointer and a smugness that could season meat. He stood next to a projection of her architecture diagram. Only now it was simplified to the point of lobotomy. Each module had a name like Smart Brain Core or Pulse Matrix, or some other Silicon Valley fever dream term he'd probably cooked up on his Peloton. Introduced the project like this. "Over the past year, we've been developing a next-gen resilience platform. I had a vision for a system that could respond to operational chaos, the same way the human body fights infection. I had a vision." Patricia sat in the back, arms folded so tight they ached. Her knuckles turned white. She didn't speak. Not yet, because part of her still clung to logic. "He needs me. He can't pull it off without me. Maybe this is just politics. He'll loop me in. He'll give credit where it's due." But another part, the part that had been burned before by past managers, past friends, past exes who'd called her too intense and too much, that part was already making a list. Quietly, line by line. Mark ended the session with a flourish. "We'll be presenting this to the board next month. I'll handle the big picture. Patricia'll help with some of the demos. Keep it smooth. Keep it sharp." Just like that, she'd been downgraded from architect to demo girl. No one clapped, but Mark didn't need applause. He fed on the silence of conquered rooms. Later that night, while Patricia was running regression tests, she paused to look at the architecture logs. Her name was listed on every component header, every commit, every changelog entry. She took a screenshot, saved it. Then, without really thinking, she whispered out loud to the empty room, "Bury me, motherfucker. I dare you." The email hit her inbox at 8:41 a.m. sharp, like a digital slap. It was supposed to be a routine calendar update from the admin team. Patricia almost deleted it without looking. But then her eye caught the subject line. "Keynote approval. Mark Garrison Project Nightingale Visionary." Pitch. Her mouse froze mid-click. She opened it, heart already clawing at her ribs. The body of the message was simple. Sterile. Corporate. "Board is confirmed for May 12th. Mark will deliver the keynote on Project Nightingale's development journey and visionary architecture. Please direct any support materials to him by end of week." There it was. In one sentence, 7 years of sweat-soaked, code-stained labor had been plucked from her chest and wrapped in a bow for someone else's gift bag. No mention of her. No co-presenter slot. No technical lead footnote. Just support materials. Legacy reduced to a Google Drive link. She sat still for a long moment. So still, her screen went to sleep. By 9:02, she was standing outside Mark's office door, fists clenched, jaw locked like a hydraulic press. She didn't knock, just stepped in. Mark was half reclined in his chair, feet up like a damn hedge fund bro on vacation. He looked up from his phone with a smile that tried to say casual, but came off more contemptuous. Patricia, hey, get that calendar update? Exciting, right? Yeah, she said, voice low, super exciting. Just one thing I don't get, where the hell is my name? Mark blinked, then sat up. Your name? She crossed her arms. You're giving the keynote on my system, on my architecture. On code you couldn't even spell check without crashing a test server. So yeah, where the hell is my name, Mark? He sighed, like this was a messy plumbing issue he didn't feel like dealing with. Okay, look, get that you're feeling a little territorial. But this is bigger than just the dev side, okay? This is strategy, vision, stakeholder alignment. You've been amazing, really, but don't you dare, she snapped. Don't you patronize me. Mark leaned back again, tapping his fingers on the desk like a man who'd practiced this in the mirror. Patricia, look, I appreciate your input. But at the end of the day, some people are leaders and some are just support. This needed a leader to bring it home. The word support hit her like a steel toe to the teeth. It wasn't just dismissal, it was erasure, it was corporate euthanasia. Like she was a whiteboard marker he'd used until dry, now tossed in a drawer with the dead batteries and old badge clips. Her face didn't move, not a twitch. But inside, something ruptured, quietly, like a pipe deep under concrete. She felt it, not an explosion, not yet, but a crack that would keep spreading until the whole thing collapsed. Support, she repeated, voice flat. Right. He nodded like they'd just finished a therapy session. I knew you'd understand. And hey, I'll make sure to mention the whole team during the Q&A if it comes up. She stared at him for 3 long seconds, memorizing the exact shade of smug on his face. The slight creases around his mouth, the way his right eye twitched when he lied. Then she turned and walked out. No storming, no dramatic exit, just quiet steps and nuclear thoughts. By the time she reached her desk, the shaking had started, not panic, not fear. The kind of tremble that comes when your nervous system is trying to process rage that doesn't fit inside skin. She sat down, opened her terminal, and pulled up the Featherfall protocol. Just to check, just to remember. The command prompt blinked, patient. The access key still worked. The trigger chain was intact. She hadn't touched it in months, but it waited for her like a coiled snake. She didn't execute anything, not yet, but she stared at the screen long enough for the idea to start breathing. Across the room, someone laughed a meme. Someone else popped a soda. The office hummed its usual clueless tune. And Patricia, she smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of a woman who'd just been buried alive, had remembered where she kept the dynamite. The weekend after Mark's betrayal stretched like gum stuck to a boot, ugly, slow, and impossible to ignore. Patricia tried to sleep. She couldn't, tried to eat. Everything tasted like drywall. Her brain looped his words over and over like a cursed voicemail. Some people are leaders, some are just support. She'd hear it washing dishes, hear it brushing her teeth, hear it when the microwave beeped. By Sunday afternoon, she was pacing her apartment in sweatpants and fury, gripping a coffee mug like it owed her rent. HR? She'd thought about it for half a second. But what would she say? My boss stole my legacy and patted me on the head like I was a goddamn intern. They'd nod sympathetically, then route her to some useless conflict resolution seminar, probably hosted by Mark's old roommate from business school. Quit. Tempting. Walk away. Let Nightingale sink under the weight of Mark's clueless ego. But that wasn't justice. That was surrender. And Patricia wasn't built for surrender. She was built for terminal velocity, so she sat down, pulled out her old dev laptop, the off-network one, never connected to company VPN, and logged into a sandbox mirror she'd secretly maintained for testing edge case bugs. She didn't need root access. She was the root, Featherfall, her backdoor, one she'd written in a haze of caffeine and paranoia years ago after watching another female engineer get credit napped into oblivion. She typed in a test command. The response came back clean. Latency, negligible, remote trigger, operational. Her heart didn't pound. It slowed like her body knew this wasn't panic anymore. This was the prelude to execution. She didn't launch anything. Not yet. But she ran diagnostics, checked the routing proxies, tested a signal loop through a public cafe Wi-Fi node 2 blocks from HQ. That worked too. No traces, no logging backflow. Then she planted a seed. There was a minor module, data path cache stack, a smart little routine that optimized stream handling across endpoints. Nobody but her understood it, which was why no one ever touched it. She embedded a non-breaking recursive glitch, a kind of Schrödinger's bug, invisible unless triggered, flaring up just enough to slow the system and generate warning flags. Not failure, just friction. By Monday morning, Mark noticed it. Patricia was at her desk, sipping black coffee like burnt tar when he swung by with his best "I'm a cool boss" lean. "Hey, got a few cash hiccups overnight. You mind peeking under the hood?" "Oh," she said, eyebrows lifted, voice a perfect deadpan. "I thought you were monitoring that part." Mark chuckled like a man who couldn't find his own ass with a GPS. "You're the wizard behind the curtain, Patricia." "I'm just the guy who makes sure the curtain gets dry cleaned." She smiled. "Sure, I'll take a look." She didn't, not right away. She wanted to see if he'd try. He didn't. Instead, he scheduled a meeting about finalizing the story for the boardroom, asked her to put together a confidence map, and forwarded her 3 TED talks he said nailed the vibe. She watched him posture in meetings, misquote specs, and spew phrases like cloud-native symbiosis, with the confidence of a man who thought GitHub was a new dating app. And with every slide he butchered, every diagram he dumbed down, her rage calcified into something colder. Cleaner. She wasn't going to break him with complaints or call-outs. She was going to let him climb as high as he could on her creation, and then she was going to cut the rope. The plan was forming now, like fog retreating from a mountain. There would be a moment, one precise, irreparable second. She'd find it, she'd wait. And when it came, Mark wouldn't just fall, he'd vanish. Patricia spent the next 10 days living a double life so flawlessly it would have made the CIA jealous. By day, she played the worn-out dev who'd accepted the outcome. She let Mark refer to her as his technical rock star without flinching, laughed politely when he called her his secret weapon, nodded during meetings while he butchered her architecture with phrases like modular intuition flow, smiled while he used her airtight documentation as a teleprompter, said nothing when he printed her changelog and handed it to the CTO with his initials in the footer. But by night, she became something else entirely. She researched everything, to trigger feather fall through triple proxy relays, using TOR exit nodes, bouncing across 6 continents. How to execute a one-time payload that would delete core Nightingale datasets in a cascading chain. No alerts, no trace, no forensic breadcrumbs. She mapped the execution path across 4 devices. One of them was a $10 burner flip phone she bought from a drugstore off I-75 next to a vape shop and a Dollar Tree. She named it Little Finger. For 2 nights straight, she practiced using it with surgical timing. Flip open, navigate to pre-coded text string, tap send, kill, simple, elegant, lethal. Her script, nested deep inside Nightingale's auxiliary error handler, sat camouflaged among 1,000 benign cron jobs. It wasn't even a real file. Just a malformed log entry with an embedded function that looked like an exception comment. Unless someone had written that exact line of code, and no one had or ever would, it looked like debug debris. One trigger from Patricia, and it would sweep through the system like a controlled burn, wiping encrypted datasets, deleting service linkages, overriding backups with randomized null sequences, and finally replacing the main GUI with a single screen. Project Nightingale, total system failure. Core data integrity compromised. She even left a fallback shell, locked behind a puzzle only she could solve, just in case she ever wanted to restore it. She didn't think she would, but it comforted her, like knowing where your old house keys are even after you've moved on. Meanwhile, she deepened her cover. At the team stand-up, she volunteered to help format demo slides so the transitions don't lag again. At lunch, she feigned enthusiasm about being part of something bigger, dropped phrases like Mark's leadership has really streamlined things, and happy to assist with any technical hitches. She even stayed late one night to help him prep the live demo environment. What she really did that night was check the status of the server backups he claimed were on auto-sync. They weren't. Of course they weren't. The idiot hadn't run a proper external backup in 3 weeks, too afraid of triggering a sync loop before the big day. He was terrified of a glitch. He didn't realize he was the glitch. She walked him through the demo server like a patient tutor helping a golden retriever file taxes. He took notes on a legal pad, laughed when he misspelled kernel, called her a godsend. She nodded, just doing my job. She started leaving little encouragements on the whiteboard. You got this. In Sharpie, complete with a winky face. Mark beamed at them like they were love notes from fate. Had to physically bite her tongue when he told the intern, it's really about trusting your team to support your vision. Support. The word had become a quiet drumbeat in her head. Not painful anymore, just steady, fuel. When he finally announced the board presentation date, May 12th, 11 a.m. sharp, he stood in the kitchen and said, It's going to change my career. Everything's riding on this. Patricia clinked her coffee mug against his like a toast. Let's make sure it's unforgettable. May 12th broke like a glass bottle on concrete, sharp, loud, and dangerous in all the right places. Patricia woke before the sun, her apartment soaked in that weird orange hue that makes everything feel like it's being viewed through a crime scene filter. She brewed the coffee extra bitter. No sugar, no cream. Today didn't call for comfort. It called for precision. The office group chat was already chirping by 6:45 a.m. Big day, go Mark. Rocket briefcase oncoming, hope he nails it. Board's full attendance today, even Michelle's flying in from HQ. Patricia replied once, sitting this one out. Migraine, rooting for you all from the dark, no emojis, no fluff, just enough to stay invisible. Mark didn't message her. Of course he didn't. He was too busy being a visionary. At 7:12 a.m., she flipped open the burner phone, little finger. Did a network check. Proxy chain intact. Latency, 42 ms, all green. The execution string sat there in her draft folder, disguised as a meaningless string of emojis and punctuation. One tap would activate the trigger chain embedded in Nightingale's auxiliary. One tap would kill his coronation mid-sentence. By 8 o'clock, she was in her sweats, sitting cross-legged at the kitchen table, laptop open, live stream pulled up from the internal broadcast server. Always streamed big announcements internally, a weird bit of performative transparency. Normally, it was boring compliance updates or weird icebreaker games for team alignment. But today it was a firing squad in HD. Mark appeared on screen at 8:41. Slick suit, cheap smile, standing under a banner that said, Project Nightingale, Innovation in Motion. He looked like a substitute teacher trying to pitch crypto to retirees. Behind him sat the entire C-suite. Michelle from HQ had indeed flown in. Patricia recognized a few more VPs, the new CTO, even that sleaze from legal who always hit on interns during happy hour. All eyes on Mark. All knives ready to be polished. At 9:03, her phone buzzed. It was Kaitlyn from QA. Hey, just wanted to say I'm thinking of you. I know this day must be hard. I mean, we all know who built it, even if, well, no, just take care of yourself, okay? Patricia paused. Her throat tightened. Thanks, she said softly. It means more than you know. She hung up and stared at the stream again. Mark was shaking hands, smiling, nodding, looking like the damn prom king about to give a TED talk. He took a seat on the panel for pre-presentation interview with the internal comms lead. The feed had a caption, Mark Garrison, lead architect Project Nightingale. Lead architect. Mark smirked into the camera like he'd just coded gravity. Well, he said, voice full of self-fondling confidence, this project was all about vision, seeing beyond the present to build what's next. I remember sketching out Nightingale's skeleton on a napkin at a conference hotel last year. Patricia nearly spit her coffee. He was rewriting the history right in front of her, to a room full of people who either didn't know better or didn't care. She flipped the burner open again, watched the clock tick. 9:28 a.m. He was getting close. His cadence was rising, that fake passion slipping into his tone like he was on a tech stage in a mall food court. She minimized the stream, brought up the command terminal on her dev laptop, ran a final silent ping to the server alias she'd hard-coded months ago. It pinged back, alive and unaware. She opened the draft message on little finger. Her thumb hovered over send. Outside her apartment window, a bird screamed. Not sang, screamed. Like it knew what was about to go down. She smiled to herself. Mark had climbed the mountain, microfoned, dry-cleaned, and marinated in stolen glory. And she was about to light the fuse that turned his empire into ash. The lights dimmed. A hush swept across the conference room. The kind of hush that smells like fresh linen, new money, and the collective tension of executives pretending to be impressed. Patricia turned up the stream's volume. She wanted to hear it all. Mark strode onto the stage like he owned the algorithm of destiny. Crisp navy suit, pocket square folded into a triangle so precise it could have drawn blood. The logo for Nightingale loomed behind him on a massive screen, its interface stylized, dumbed down for suits, polished to a meaningless sheen. He took the mic like he was born with it. Good morning, everyone, he said, beaming. Honored to stand here today and unveil the future of our infrastructure intelligence. Project Nightingale has been a labor of passion, of persistence, and of leadership. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Leadership. He really couldn't help himself. I remember the early days, Mark continued, pacing like a man who watched too many TED talks on planes. When this was just a seed, a concept, A sketch I scribbled on a napkin at a hotel bar. Funny story, actually. Wasn't funny. And I said to myself, what if we built something that doesn't just respond to failure, but prevents it? What if we had a system that learned, adapted, and healed itself before we even knew there was a problem? The audience nodded. One of the VPs leaned in, fascinated. Michelle from HQ was jotting notes. Patricia clicked her pen open, closed it again. Mark kept going, hands flying with practiced ease. Nightingale isn't just smart, strategic. It redefines resilience. Every line of code, every function, carefully architected to keep our systems not just online, but optimized. He shifted to his slides. They flowed slick as an oil spill. Graphs, charts, smiling stock photos of diverse teams collaborating. A fake server schematic lifted directly from her original diagram, except now it had dumb names like Harmony Node and Instinct Grid. Patricia had given up being angry about those. They weren't hers anymore. He could butcher the bones, but the blood still belonged to her. And of course, Mark said, his smile deepening, no system is complete without the people who keep it running. I've been fortunate to work with an incredible team, folks who really brought the vision to life. Reliable systems, he added with a smug pause, are only possible through dedicated teams under strong leadership. There it was, final shovel of dirt onto her grave. Patricia didn't flinch. She was past anger, past nerves. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was the natural order asserting itself. Mark turned to the final slide. And now, let me show you what Nightingale can really do. The room clapped. Light applause, polite but hopeful. He clicked the remote. The screen behind him shifted. The Nightingale live interface loaded. Real-time telemetry. Network performance graphs, all connected to the production simulation server she'd helped configure for today. Patricia reached for little finger, flipped it open. Mark stepped toward the display, arms out like he was summoning fire. Nightingale, he declared, responds faster than anything we've ever deployed. Let's simulate a cascading failure and watch how it adapts in real time. He clicked the trigger button. The system chirped. The simulation began. He grinned. Now watch as Nightingale detects. Patricia pressed send. 1 second, 2, 3, Mark's voice faltered. Should be seeing some predictive metrics here. The interface froze. Behind him, the live stream feed caught the first flicker. Graphs stopped animating. System readouts blinked erratically. One of the VPs whispered something. Mark clicked again. Just a slight lag, probably a network thing. The stream cut to a wide shot. On screen, the background collapsed into black. A blinking red banner appeared. Patricia leaned in, watched her custom message unfurl like prophecy. Project Nightingale, total system failure, core data integrity compromised. And below that, smaller, just for him, leadership doesn't mean stealing the throne. It means knowing how to build one. Mark froze. The room erupted, first in confusion, then in full-scale corporate panic. People stood. Phones came out. Michelle from HQ bolted from her chair. CTO looked like someone had slapped him with a compliance binder. Mark turned slowly to the screen, his mouth working for words that wouldn't come. Patricia, she reached for her coffee, took a long sip, then whispered, "Welcome to your legacy." The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was biblical. The kind of silence that sinks anchors into your chest and pulls you down into the icy realization that something irreversible just happened. Mark stood dead center in the spotlight, his arm frozen mid-gesture like a wax figure mid-stroke. Behind him, the giant screen pulsed red, the final message stark against the void. Project Nightingale, total system failure, core data integrity compromised. No animation, no restart option, no fallback prompt, just that blinking digital tombstone. Then came the error messages. Hundreds of them, cascading in real time like a slot machine from hell. Each line declaring a process dead, a cache unrecoverable, a node isolated. The demo server's vitals flatlined before everyone's eyes. A system that was supposed to be uncrashable had folded like wet cardboard in front of the CEO, the board, and every executive with a bonus riding on its success. A VP shouted, "Is this part of the simulation?" Someone else, off camera, mumbled, "Oh my God." Mark's mouth opened, closed, opened again, clicked his remote 3 times like it was a panic button. The screen didn't care. It had stopped listening. He turned toward the tech team in the wings like they were supposed to save him. One of them made the universal gesture for "we have no idea." The CTO stood up slowly. Michelle from HQ looked physically ill. Mark finally managed. It's a glitch, I'm sure." Probably a test environment rollback failure, but the words crumbled midair. Kind of failure on display wasn't a minor hiccup. It was a deep, intentional annihilation. Anyone with half a brain could see this wasn't a system accident, it was a system execution. And that was the point. Patricia sat cross-legged at her kitchen table, the glow of her laptop screen flickering in rhythm with Mark's unraveling. She reached forward and closed the lid, not abruptly, not with any fanfare. Just a quiet, final click. She leaned back in her chair, exhaled slowly, and let the moment settle over her like snowfall after a storm. No one would believe it was her. Not at first, maybe not ever. She'd covered her tracks with the kind of paranoia that only years of being overlooked could cultivate. Proxy chains, scrubbed logs, no direct connection. The featherfall trigger was one and done, no callback signal, no traceable handshake. Would there be an investigation? Absolutely. Would it find anything? Not unless they hired a clairvoyant who could read spite in the source code. But honestly, she didn't care. Mark's reputation hadn't just taken a hit, it had been vaporized. The live stream footage alone would make it into internal training modules for decades as what not to do when claiming someone else's work. He'd be lucky to land a LinkedIn endorsement from a middle school robotics club. She poured herself a fresh coffee. Didn't even bother with the creamer. Outside, traffic honked and buzzed like nothing had changed. But inside Patricia's world, everything had shifted. Nightingale was dead. Long live the ghost of what should have been. And Mark would walk into 100 meetings for the rest of his miserable career and see in every raised eyebrow the silent question, "Weren't you the guy from the failure demo?" She picked up her phone. One new message from Kaitlin, "Are you watching this?" Holy SHT. What the hell happened? Patricia typed back, "Guess the system didn't like being stolen." Then hit send and turned her phone face down. She didn't feel peace, not exactly, but she felt something better. Done. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.